Leslie Dutton and Full Disclosure have been doggedly pursuing the extraordinary abuse of disbarred attorney Richard I. Fine for exposing judicial corruption.
The case that we have now is dealing with a dysfunctional system because of the fact that this is now pure politics and retaliation.
Richard Fine gave an exclusive series of interviews to Full Disclosure in studio before his confinement on March 4th and by telephone from his jail cell. Leslie interviewed citizens who are getting angry.
Well, I'm here today to try to urge the judges and politicians and the people of Los Angeles to get attorney Richard I. Fine out of jail.
The issue appears to be too complex for the mainstream media. Activist John Rizzo shakes his head at the Los Angeles Times.
Their job is to report the news, and they're not quite doing the job they should have, and this is part of it, this thing with Mr. Fine. They make it a human interest story when it's really a story that should be really delved into and uncovered.
Some people suggest that the media is in collusion with the government to suppress the issue of judicial corruption.
That mainstream media now is a tool of the government. There's not even a discussion point on that. We know that.
Leslie Dutton has assembled hours of interviews and has tracked down legal experts far and wide to learn more about the issue and bring the truth to the public. In-depth interviews with Professor Robert Gerstein and Judicial Watch attorney Sterling Norris brought much insight to the issue.
They put into this bill an immunity from prosecution. Immunity from prosecution for what? And liability for what?
Do you know it to be a fact that it was the developers' attorneys that pursued the contempt?
Oh, yes.
As a result of her determined investigation, Leslie discovered the source of Mr. Fine's persecution. Greedy developers had to get rid of Mr. Fine to protect their projects in Marina del Rey.
R.J. Comer and Joshua.
And who'd they work for?
And they worked for the Shores project.
And who owned the Shores?
And Epstein owned the Shores.
And the property is owned, the Shores is located on property. Who owns that property?
The people who own the property is the county, but it's leased to the Shores, to the Epsteins. So everything in Marina del Rey is owned by the county. They're supposed to protect it the way the national government is protecting Yosemite. But instead, they're breaking all the laws, ignoring the laws, and trying to make a Miami Beach out of it.
Their attorneys, working with the state bar and with support of the California Supreme Court, emasculated Mr. Fine by disbarring him. Nowhere else is this information available. But there have been roadblocks. Every attempt by Full Disclosure to interview Mr. Fine while in jail has been denied by the sheriff, denying the First Amendment right to freedom of the press.
Armed with this information, we telephoned the sheriff and placed another request to interview Mr. Fine. The sheriff's spokesman, Whitmore, not only said no, but hell no.
Hi, Leslie. This is Steve Whitmore. I am unfortunately the bearer of bad news. The sheriff has repeatedly told me that will not happen. And so your request has been denied. And he has not. I just talked to him yesterday about this, and he said it again. He said, no, that's not going to happen. So it's not going to happen, Leslie, and I'm sorry to have to deliver that to you.
Why isn't this important issue of judicial and county corruption being covered with the urgency it deserves? Sterling Norris underscores the terrible damage being done to the credibility of our justice system.
And to think that the parties that are involved in this are judges. I mean, you have to say, I know most of society likes to look at the judiciary as something as probably the most highest integrity of any governmental agency, more than the legislature, more than the executive branch, and I think this goes just the opposite. Makes it very questionable.
Find out about the enormity of this problem. Is there corruption in the judiciary? Is our court system threatened? Leslie Dutton has documented it all in the case of Richard I. Fine and the Judicial Watch legal battle to restore integrity to the courts. To book Leslie on your show covering judicial corruption, contact Full Disclosure at 310-822-4449.